I'm here with Bill Sholette, the product manager from Endress+Hauser. Bill, welcome.
Hey, thank you.
Hey, we talked a little bit a preamble, and we're going to talk today about tank inventory management with Endress+Hauser, and even some generic terms about what tank inventory management is. But before we go there, the reason we're talking about that is I think when people in this area think about Endress+Hauser, they think about tuning forks, where we're a global leader. Radar, where we're a global leading company. Even capacitance or ultrasonics or nuclear gauging. Those are the things that you and I talk about all the time.
Sure.
And I think one of the best kept secrets, at least in this geography, is Endress+Hauser tank inventory management. So let's go there. Let's talk about Bill. What is tank inventory management, and what does Endress have to offer in that area? And I know you got some slides, and I'll let you go a little bit, and then we'll go a little back and forth. But
sure,
let's go there.
So inventory management is the process of ordering, storing, using, and then eventually selling the company's product, their materials. It comes into play from our standpoint in doing the measurements of stored vessels, flow meters, flowing materials, visualization of all that. And then, of course, in today's world, everything gets tied to the internet, right? So
Yes.
if you can't see it on the internet, it probably doesn't exist, or at least in the ability to see that. So we then have the ability to allow the internet to tie in and see all those inventories, pull them all together. Could be one facility, could be a facility, couple of facilities in the area, could be facilities around the world. And the customers can go in and they can take account of their inventory from all those locations. You hear terms like zero loss, things like that, static inventory, dynamic inventory, all those kind of terms have to do with the material moving and the ability to reconcile what's coming in and what's going out. And the idea is to minimize the loss to maximize the profit, obviously, in the end result.
Okay.
So that's kind of in a nutshell what inventory management is. There's a lot to it. It depends on the industry you're in. Certainly, it's a little different for oil and gas than it would be for, say, the edible oils industry. The process is somewhat the same, but obviously the intent is a little different.
It's interesting. Just jumping in there, you mentioned minimizing loss and maximizing profit. I remember a couple of years ago, you and I were talking to a chemical manufacturer, and they were doing an expansion, and they had several locations around the country, and they confided in us. They said, "You know what? We don't know how much we're losing. We don't have a really good grasp on that number." And I remember us going into that and saying, "Well, here's how you get the grasp of that number, a better finite number on this, on
Right.
Product loss and product management."
Yeah, if you can't measure it, then how do you know what's there, right? And in the past, in the old days, somebody would go up and put a stick down there or a cable, and okay, was this much, and then they reconcile that. The other thing that's important in inventory management is looking at the material and understanding the properties of the material. For example, in the oil and gas industry, hydrocarbons, oil and gas, they expand and contract with temperature. So you fill a product in a tank and you say we have, I don't know, let's say 60,000 gallons, just for argument's sake. And then that's in the morning, it's cold. In the afternoon, it heats up, it expands. Now the level's gone up, but you don't have any more material. It's still only 60,000 gallons, it's just expanded. So it's important in those cases to be able to take temperature measurements to compensate for that expansion and contraction of material. So we do all that too. That's all part of our process.
Okay. Good point. So how does Endress play in that arena? Like, what's the product offering? Like, what do they offer in that area?
Sure. So I'm going to share my screen if that's okay.
Yeah, let's do a share screen and take a couple shots.
And just do this here.
It's all right. It's good. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Okay. So typically when people think of Endress+Hauser, they think of the primary measurement, which is the radar measurement, the servo measurement, those products that provide the initial measurement of the material. But we do a lot more than that. We can then take that measurement and take it into a gateway. And then that gateway can be accessed via the internet, pulled together, and the amount of material can be consolidated and reconciled. It can be visualized on computer screens, on iPhones, on iPads. It's really incredible what we're doing today with the ability to access data. And that's what it all comes down to is, whoever has better access to the data is probably going to win the race. That's the way it works these days.
Well, we live in a data-driven society for sure. So,
exactly. So here's just a quick example. Here's a company that's got tanks all over the world, and we could pull them all together, and we could use the CEO or the financial CFO can sit in his office, or her office, I should say, and look at the inventory all over the world. In some cases, they might say, we've got a vessel full of alcohol in Burma, and we don't really need it. We just found out we have it. We could sell that on the open market and make a profit on that. So there's a lot of ways the inventory is controlled and used, as long as you have the proper data.
Wow, and that could tie into, well, yeah, and that ties into their logistics too, downstream. I mean, so there you go. And now we live in a world right now where there's a lot of challenges logistically. So if you control your management of inventory better, now you can perhaps control your logistical issues better.
Right. The other thing that you can do is you can look at your inventory and say, okay, the price of such and such has just dropped. I have room for that in several tanks because I can see that I have room for it. Let's get some of that on order and fill it up while the price is down.
Yes.
There's a lot of things that inventory management lets you do. Beyond that, it's the reports, it's invoicing, it's ordering. You could set it up so that it'll tell you, hey, you're low in vessel 7. We need to place an order. We're going to have to stop production. Hey, you can trend that and know how much you're using over a given time. It's a very powerful tool when you are able to not only measure the material, but then get that data and use it for your inventory control.
Bill, is there an output of this system that goes to someone's DCS platform, or is this more of a standalone platform that Endress provides the backup hardware, let's say?
Typically, you could tie into the DCS system, but the software, we have software that's our software that can be used to visualize and then do all the reporting and all the ordering and the invoicing. We call it supply care. That's one version. So that's all available. The other thing that's important to know is when you go into it, let's say you go into an older terminal where the customer already has a platform for inventory control. Maybe it's somebody else's. It's not Endress+Hauser. And now they're putting in some more tanks. They want to put in some new inventory control units. They want to put in some measurements and so on. We can tie into their existing platform. They don't have to change their platform. That way they can just integrate it in, bring that in, and use that data through their existing system. So we have the ability to merge like that.
So in a way, would you say then we're quote unquote kind of in a way like a brand agnostic solution then, in that we can work with other manufacturers if they already have an existing base?
Absolutely.
We've had that conversation.
Yes.
We have, and in full transparency there, you just pinged me on that, and I'm thinking, pinged my brain on that. And yeah, we've had customers who come to us going, you know what, we're in a relationship right now with another manufacturer, and we want to investigate alternate solutions because we have an expansion, and we don't want to be necessarily tied into this one brand. We want to investigate other options.
Exactly, and yet that ability exists, and we can certainly do that. And then when you get into inventory, there's your basic inventory of your plant where you're moving materials around, you're mixing things, you're coming up with new products and so on. There's also a term called custody transfer.
I was going to go right there with you. I almost jumped in on you there. Yeah, let's
Okay.
talk about
I
that.
should have let you go for it. So anyway, custody transfer is where you're taking materials that you have and they are now being sold to someone else. You're transferring the custody. Very high accuracy is required because you're actually billing based on that flow meter or that level measurement. In some cases where you're dealing with things like alcohols and oils and edible oils, and so they may be taxed, or probably are taxed, right? The tax man's going to get us one way or the other.
Yeah.
And based on what you're outflowing, for example, you're going to be taxed based on that. So it's very important that it be highly accurate and correct for that reason.
Okay. Good point. I guess final question, Bill, is we're moving here and going touching base and giving just a kind of nice overview on tank inventory management with Endress. Is there a minimum amount of tanks that we should be talking about? For instance, you and I have a customer that wants to talk to us right now about 8 or 10 tanks. So to me, is that potentially a tank inventory management control conversation? Or is there a minimum amount of tanks that someone is really looking to do? Or perhaps the question is, it really depends on what they're doing with those tanks. So can you
That's the
speak
right,
to that? Go
yeah,
ahead.
that's the right question is what, Mr. Customer, what do you want to do? And
Okay.
you just want a level measurement, maybe you want a high level switch for redundancy and safety, or, it's only one tank, but I have one tank here, I have another tank over there, and I have a tank in Ohio and a tank in Texas. And I'd like to know at any time here at the headquarters what is in each of those tanks. At that point, then it becomes, okay, somehow we have to then tie that into the internet. And that's where we put in a gateway. They can go in and they can tie all that together and see that. So again, it really depends on the need of the customer, what they're trying to do, maybe what they're trying to do now, or maybe what they're trying to do in the future, because it's all expandable. You could put a level measurement in a tank today, and then 2 years from now say, gee, I'd really like to be able to see that on the internet. Okay, let's tie that into a gateway and we can go ahead and do that.
So it really, at the end of the day, right, it's funny. On my last point here, and I was making some notes before the podcast the last couple of days, it really depends on the goal of the customer, right?
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
the what's in it. I'm the customer speaking to a manufacturer, and I'm saying, here's my goal and objective. I want to have a better understanding of what my inventory control looks like, what my product in and out looks like. And I've got ins and outs, and I've got dollar costs here, and I've got multiple locations, and I really want to tighten this thing down. Now we're talking tank inventory control management, tank inventory.
Correct. Yep. And there's no minimum or maximum. It could be one tank, it could be 500 tanks. We can do any of that. It's just a matter of what the customer needs, what the customer wants. And your job, my job, is to sit down with the customer and ask those questions, right? Like, what do you need? What do you want to do? We're not trying to sell you something you don't want. We want to make sure we meet your needs and get the job done and have a reliable system put in for you so that you can get that data and make a lot of money, right? That's what it all comes down. The bottom line, right?
There you go. Bill, I think that's a great way to wrap up the podcast is just a point of, hey, Bill, thanks for joining me today. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
And customers watching this podcast, we're going to wrap things up today. This is Bill Wolf signing off. But the point is that if you have a challenge in level, you want to talk about level applications, you want to talk about tank inventory management, reach out to us here at Eastern Controls and ask for your particular salesperson. If that salesperson is me, call me and let's get into that dialogue and let's have a conversation.
Don't forget, level's important, but flow's important too, especially in inventory tank agents. So don't forget flow. We do that too.
Yeah, it all ties in.
Yep.
Level, flow.
Sure. Everything.
Yeah,
yep.
Exactly. So great point. Thanks again, Bill, for joining me today, and we'll see you again.